Welcome back to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast. This is episode 150. And today I'm doing something special. I'm replaying one of the best of Raising Wild Hearts episodes. This one is for all my fellow type A'ers out there, maybe those recovering perfectionists. You know who you are. When it comes to parenting, it's extremely challenging, especially if you have a strong-willed child or children. I don't know about you, but my number one goal, my North Star in parenting is building a strong and healthy lifelong relationship with my kids. So if you're like me and you want to build a really foundational, healthy relationship with your kids, what is a recovering type A'er to do? And here's the truth. When we try to control our children, we are always paying for that with connection. We cannot control somebody and have connection at the same time. And that is what our guest today, Ginny Luther, author of Blue Star Grit, is sharing with us. Welcome to the podcast, Ginny.
Well, thank you for having me on. I feel honored.
The way we think about discipline in our society is a little backwards, but some of us don't even know that it's backwards. What is going on there?
Well, most people do what they were taught. So if you were exposed as a child trying to express your distress, which is what we do through emotion, emotion is the vehicle for us really expressing our distress. And we go to the people that soothe us, which is our parents. They've always been the soothers in our lives. And if you get punished for that, or often somebody throws imposed guilt on you. Look how you make your mother feeling when you act that way. Because when you think about children's behavior, an upset state is usually a state most of us adults resist in children. We resist it. So when you resist, it's number one going to persist. But aside from that, your first sense is to try to control it. And so to control it, traditionally, we've been using punitive approaches to discipline, which says, I can control you. And conscious discipline perspective is, I can't control you. The only person I can make changes myself. The only person I can control is my own response to my child's upset.
Right. So for those of us who might not be familiar with conscious discipline, in a nutshell, what's the foundation of it? What is it for? Who is it for?
It's for everyone. Dr. Bailey doesn't really like to refer to it as a program, and I myself, it's really more a way of being, because the difference between conscious discipline and most other social emotional learning programs is that it starts with the adult first. So discipline essentially isn't something we do to children. Discipline is something that we help them to develop in themselves. And that's a very different perspective, because if I'm going to help somebody manage their emotional state and have them take total responsibility for it, I have to be in a space with that person, whether it's a spouse or a child or anyone that you're with in a moment. I have to be willing to be open and see what's going on for that person, versus trying to defend myself. And the difference also with conscious discipline is that all of it comes, interestingly enough, from understanding a brain model of how we actually develop regulation and how children develop regulation. And we know that the traditional responses that we have that are controlling, what that does to children is it stops the actual integration of self-regulation. Self-regulation doesn't actually be completely wired up in your brain to be accessed immediately until you're 25. When a 2-year-old is upset and a 4-year-old's upset, and we think that they should be responding like an adult or acting better than we are in the moment, we expect them to act better than we are. That's just crazy.
Right. So it's not something that we even do. It's something that we are. Is that a proper way to think about it?
I would say so. And that's a process. The basic thing I tell the parents is your response has an impact on your child. It has an impact on anybody. You walk in a room and your behavior, your thoughts, how you're responding to your thoughts and your actions and your feelings are all going to dictate an energy to the person that's receiving you. And so if
Yeah.
that energy is resistant, then you're going to be defending. You're going down to the lower centers of your brain for response versus the higher, more intellectual and problem solving parts of your brain. And so then you walk out saying, I can't handle this person. I don't want this person to be my friend anymore. Or
Yeah.
this child's going to go to their room. And until they can figure it out, I am not going to tolerate their behavior. It's a big deal. In order for this to work for you, it starts with you. It starts with your responses because they have an impact on how your child's going to respond.
And I think that's both the good news and the bad
And the bad
news.
news.
Yeah. It's really tricky to unravel a lot of the things that we've been living with for decades. Personally, I just turned 40, and I think that my work really started at 30. So I've been a decade in so far, and I'm like, man, this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the weary, but I'm here for it. It's a journey. I'm here for it though.
Well, the decades are interesting because I think 40s is the third major developmental stage in your life when you are focused on who you really are and who you want to be and what your life is. You do a lot of self-evaluation. It's a pretty egocentric stage, but not in a bad way. It's in like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Question comes, what is my real purpose? I've been proving myself and making the money and I've got the children and now what? That's the third stage. The other two stages are 2-year-olds and teens. And
Wow.
those are huge stages for self-actualization. So your children are going to be defiant in those stages. They're required to be defiant in those stages. And so I always see good leaders, as in my book, Blue Star Grit, I raised an exceptional leader, but his leadership was chosen by himself by the way I guided him versus tried to control him.
I want to go back to, if we can, the wooden spoon moment that you
Oh,
talk about in your book, because I think that's a pivotal moment where we as parents, and we may have many of them, right, where we have a choice. Do we act like a lunatic or scream or shout, or do we take the higher path and take a step back or take the elevator up or whatever and choose differently? So take us back to the wooden spoon moment and what clicked for you. How did you know, like, this is it, I'm done?
well, that I was mostly unconscious. Like have you ever watched yourself act stupid?
Yep.
Right. So it was a moment I was watching myself act stupid. I was resisting myself, but I couldn't help myself. And I'm sure I was imitating some of what my parents did. But Bart was turning on, he's 2, and he was very precocious. I mean, extremely precocious. And also sort of street smart. He just would always wiggle through things. And he always had the upper hand. It felt like that all the time as a single parent. And it was just one of those days because I was stressed, I didn't have the resilience in that moment. When you're really stressed, it's hard to be resilient and calm yourself. He was turning this lamp on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off and on. And I took everything off the tables, but I couldn't take the lamps off the tables. And he was trying to get my attention. He was trying to connect with me. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. I was stressed and I thought, he's doing this to me again. I have had it. And so there I go, watching myself act stupid, march into the kitchen. I grab the wooden spoon. I go out there. I get 2 inches from his face. And I say to him, if you don't stop, this is going to go on your bottom, and in my most out of control moment. And I was scared in the moment. I really was. I was scared because I was afraid I was going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
That was scary for me. Being the professional that I am, working in a psychiatric center, I should have known better. So what does he do in response to that? He pulls his pants down, turns around and goes, spank me, mommy, spank me. He's taunting me. And in that moment, that was epiphany for me because I knew at that moment I was lost completely control. I had lost control and I didn't know how to get it back. I just did not know how to get it back. And his whole life went through my my face must have turned ashen. And I stopped, I paused. I was watching the film of his life go in front of me, and he was a serial killer by the time he was 16. I thought, I don't have control on him. He's totally controlling this house. And the epiphany came when I just paused. I just paused and I sat there for a minute and there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more. There has to be another way. There's got to be more to this. And that was a moment that I said, maybe this is just not about him. It wasn't just about him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was there, but it wasn't just about him. And I didn't know, honestly, what direction to go in. I didn't. It was just the epiphany that I knew there had to be a better way. I just didn't know what it was.
So the first step for so many things is just that awareness. And it sounds like in that wooden spoon moment, you really became aware. You saw yourself acting out of control. It scared you. You felt that fear and you said, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel this anymore. I have to take accountability.
What the epiphany was about my relationship. And it was about my relationship in this moment. In that wooden spoon moment, here was Wicked Witch of the West face for a 2-year-old looking at him. And he must have been so frightened. And how Bart dealt with fear was he just made a game out of it. That's what he did. He was like, come on.
Throughout the book, I really felt like I got to know you, of course, so much, and Bart so much. And one of the stories that I just was laughing out loud was the story about George. Will you tell us about George?
Yeah, that was another time when he was small. Now, as a single parent, and if anybody is listening as a single parent, you and only you know how lonely that can be as a parent. There are many also people out there whose partners or spouses, they travel a lot. So that feels like that. You're alone. There's a good side of it. The good side of it is that you don't have to negotiate decisions about how you're going to discipline your children. You do it, you're consistent, you're there. The bad news is you never get a break. Never. And so I was working with the most challenged 3 and 4-year-olds in this county in upstate New York on this interdisciplinary team. So if anybody should have known how to manage children at the time, the traditional approaches I was using, it was me. I'm the one that should have had it most together. But I'd come home after a day of that work and would be preschoolers in my face. And I was like, can I just get a break? It was so hard for me. I just wanted 10 minutes. I just wanted them to be quiet so I could get 10 minutes to myself. And so there was one day I came home and it was one of those moments. Mommy, can we watch Gremlins? Mommy, can we go to Bees? Mommy, can I have a cookie? Mommy, I'm trying to get in the door with a couple bags of groceries in there. Mommy. And I just lost it. It was one of those moments. And I said, that's it. That is it. I am not your mother anymore. From now on in, I'm George. That's me, George. And I stomped up the stairs. I went into my bedroom. I slammed the door. I didn't even close the door. I slammed it. It was a good, nope, not your mother anymore kind of thing, not realizing the impact it was having on them. And so I'm just crying in my room. I'm just like so depleted and so victim. And I hear this pitter patter up the stairs and here's Nick, the good boy. He's my firstborn. And he's going, Mommy, you have to be my mommy. You can't not be my mommy. You got to be my mommy. And he's like, I worry about him more now than I did Bart. So anyway, he's by the door going, Mommy. And then pitter patter up the stairs. Bart has a little binky in his mouth and, I could hear him. He starts pounding on the door. He puts his binky to his side and he goes, George, get out here. We need you now. And it was just, I went from crying into hysterical laughter. It was just the funniest moment. And I almost peed in my pants and I opened up the door and we hugged each other. And I knew from that moment we were going to be fine. But it was another moment I will never, ever forget.
I laughed out loud reading that the other night. I just told my husband, and of course I reiterated it to him, and we were laughing together. It was really fun. So you say in your book, the struggle of raising a defiant child becomes personal growth when we recognize that examining the life of a child we birthed and raised affords us the opportunity to examine our own life and, with any luck, heal our own wounds. Thus, our children become our therapists. That is just one of so many quotes in this book, Blue Star Grit, that is just so impactful and spoke directly to my heart. Out of so many things, one thing that this book was about for me was healing intergenerational trauma. You took us on this marvelous journey about your mother's childhood and her struggles that she faced and your childhood. And it's just amazing to see generationally what happens in families. We all have stories like this. And so many of them get brushed under the rug. And you courageously stood up and you said, nope, not this time. I'm going to write about this. I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to heal this. How was that process, healing that trauma?
Part of what I was revealing in the book was the difference between how I managed the first blind side compared to the second blind side. And it was that I handled the second blind side, which was, of course, Bart's death, much better than I had with the first blind side. And that all was, I think, this process of being able to know that in relationships, you co-regulate with each other and you can get from or you can resist. You can either connect with a person. You're always in choice of connection or control. Those are your two choices. And the cost of control is always connection, always connection. And so the healing process for me really took a lot of time, but writing cathartically and putting it all back together was really, I can't really even describe the process because it's in the writing of the process where you're connecting with yourself so deeply. In fact, a lot of the book I wrote in third person before I actually did it in first person, because that was the only way I could see myself, was to not be so in the emotional piece of
Right.
it. But as I've learned in conscious discipline and taught, Becky and I started together. It was just two of us in the country that was teaching it. The more I taught it, the more you teach it to your children, the more you heal it in yourself. And that's why so much of this program, which is different, it's about paying it forward. It's about offering to others what you want to experience in yourself. And when you offer it to other people, ta-da! Suddenly it starts healing in your own self.
Mhm.
That's powerful. That's just so powerful. And there's moments I do it better than others. Believe me, I am not conscious all the time. Just put me in a car in traffic in Miami and you're going to see a really different person, right?
Well, you're really spunky in the book, Ginny. I mean,
You
you've
think?
got some spunk, so I believe that.
Yeah, yeah. There is spunk from the first few words is spunky.
Yep, yep.
But yeah, it's just being conscious of it. So the more I let go of control, the more aware I became, which meant that I had to forgive myself or shift my judgment of myself to acceptance. So instead of saying, I should be going to the blah, 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 I was saying, I could, but I'm not choosing to do that right now. I'm choosing to do this. Now I'm in a position to decide, do I want to continue to what I've chosen or do I want to change what I'm doing? As opposed to, I should be home doing this or I should be doing that. I should have done it that way. I should have done it this way. I need to do this. I got to do that. All of that is inner speech that says, I don't have control. I'm not in charge of my choices.
So it's the difference between being a victim and powerless versus feeling empowered, knowing that you have choices at any given moment, right?
So somebody wrote to me today, I'm reading your book and oh my gosh, you went through so much pain, and I feel your pain. And I said, I want you to feel inspired, not pain. I said, because I was victimized. There's no question, but I didn't choose to be a victim. That was the difference. Everyone gets victimized, but you don't have to choose to be a victim. You can choose to say, this happened to me, and what am I going to do with it in a way that heals, not avoiding, distracting, drinking it away, busying yourself too much away, exercising it away, embracing it because, grief it's not something to be afraid of. It's
Mhm.
intense, but it is not going to kill you. It just,
Mhm.
unless you think that it can.
I'm so glad you brought that up because one of my definitions of codependence is jumping into somebody else's story. So when I was reading your story, it was emotionally very powerful. I cried. I laughed. I felt that gut-wrenching feeling when you learned of your son's murder, when you read the 911 transcript. There were all these moments, and I had to step back and go, this is not my story. Like this, like I had to come up for air, right? So it's like essentially this is an invitation for us to kind of train ourselves to not be jumping into the story, to not feel your pain, to not feel our kids' pain, but to realize that we are projecting our own insecurities, fear, grief, and sadness onto somebody else or onto a story. So can you break that down for us a little bit? Because I think this is so relevant in every relationship we have in our lives.
What people said to me all the time was, I can't imagine. Now, what that says to me all the time is, I can't imagine says it's about me, like it's sympathy. So there's something to be said for sympathy because sympathy is showing that you care. So people express that by saying, well, I know exactly what that's like. You know what happened to me, right? Or I can't imagine because I know I couldn't handle that, right? Then they project that pain. So they don't want that pain. So they resist that pain and say those things versus empathy. So sympathy is an immature and really kind of an immature part of empathy. Okay. So it's empathy that's very immature. Empathy says, I can feel your pain and I feel your pain, but I don't have to take it on. Right. I can offer you the best vision for yourself, the best wellness, the prayer. I can offer that to you knowing that's enough, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of people said to me, I don't, like I got, through all the tragedies that I went through, there was a very different experience as a teen versus the experience as an adult with Bart. But the same things would happen to me. People would come to me if they knew me, they saw me, and they would literally turn around and walk the other way because they didn't know what to say. They clearly didn't know what to say and they didn't think they were going to handle it. Then there were the people who would do the immature sympathy. So the immature sympathy would be, let me tell you about my story because I'm trying to connect with you. That's the intention. I'm trying to connect with you. But that doesn't really help the person who's feeling the real pain. What helps the person is to see the best in them. Just be energetically there for them. In fact, the people that were the most powerful to me and helping me heal, the first thing I did was, when I found out, was to write an email and say to everybody, please do not see me as a victim. Wish me well, because I don't have it in myself right now. And if you do it for me, then we're all in this together. And you are going to help me immensely. The most powerful people just would come in and sit next to me, right? They would just sit next to me. Say, I'm here for you. In any way you want me, I'm here for you. The intention was, you're going to handle this. That's the intention. So that's the best thing you can say to your children when they're upset. No, you don't get the cookie. The limit is still there. It's still there. You don't change the limit. And it's hard. It's hard to wait, but you can do it. I know you can. You can do it. And you can have a cookie after your dinner or before your bath, but you can handle it. Now, do you see? As opposed to, now you're okay. You're okay. Don't you remember you had a cookie earlier and we don't eat cookies before dinner because that's not healthy for you. And mommy's job is to keep you safe and we want you to be healthy. Do you hear all that? They're upset. Triggers are upset. It's supposed to do that so that we can be the higher person and calm them, help them to calm themselves. But if we jump into their sandbox, we're going to be throwing sand at each other.
Yeah.
So it's what's important is your response has a huge impact. And if your energy sees the best in a child in any moment, no matter what they've done, if you see the best, it doesn't mean they get away with anything and that there's not limits or any of that. But if you see them as making a mistake versus a little heathen that's driving you nuts, there's a very different energy to both of those. That's the power of love. And the power of love says, to see the best in the worst, even some of the worst behaviors. So in the book, I don't know if you remember me and how I talked about Jody, Bart's.
Oh yeah.
And Blue Star Grit.
Yes. The man who murdered your son, right? And
Right.
you did not name him. Your husband, Jack, said, well, who are you mad at? And you said, I'm mad at the army and I'm mad at and I'm mad at, but he wasn't one of the people that came to your mind because you saw in your mind him being this boy who didn't have that presence and didn't have that connection, most likely with a loving caregiver or maybe not even an educator. I mean, this is a real fear for us as parents. I think that you bring up something so palpable in our unconscious minds of who will our kids be? What will our kids be? Will they thrive? Are we doing a good enough job? Is this a reflection of me? And you take all that and you show how to get through that entire journey, like from start to finish.
When we worry, when we see that our children are a reflection of us, then that's when you start losing your personal power. And your children do too, because what your children feel is guilt. Because when it doesn't go the way you want it to go, they feel guilty that you feel bad. They feel responsible for the way you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the hardest, we do so much, we sacrifice so much of ourselves to have a child, to raise a child, to do all that. And we put all that effort into doing it. So we should get something out of it, right?
Yes.
And I think sometimes we forget they chose to come to this planet.
Yeah.
They chose to be here and they chose you to be the parent in a very unconscious way, but they have little souls with their own agendas of what they're going to come here for. And so if you project too much of what you think it should be, which is what's really your need. Like, I mean, for me, what I used to project is, oh, they're going to live in my town. They're not going to live right next to me because that would be too close. They would want me all the time. No, they're going to live like a few miles away and I can babysit and they can drop the kids off and all this can happen. And the truth is, you're going to be sorely disappointed because they have their own life. That may happen, but it also very likely won't.
They're just on loan, not even like ours. Like I think we're like our kids. We all said, but they're their own little souls and human beings who.
And that's why I think there are therapists because they come here. You know, the one thing I said in the book that I love is we help grow each other up. You know, Bart and I help grow each other up. If you kind of see it that way, then you know, what can I learn from his upset? What can I learn from, you know, resistance? Because children are supposed to resist. When they're twos and teens, they're going to resist because they have a sense of I. And that sense of I has to come out in a resistant way because that's how you compare yourself. That's how you find your uniqueness. Your uniqueness comes from judging others compared to you. So you're going to do that. But your uniqueness, what's that uniqueness? And how can your uniqueness come out is they have to express it in lots of different ways to say, that's not the way I want it to go. The world would be so really boring if we didn't have the uniqueness and differences in the world that we have. Everybody's different. We're not born equal. We're born different.
Right.
We just have the right to pursue our happiness and liberty and freedom.
Right. And such from a young age, I mean, probably from the age of 2, we're really there to support our children in their individuation process. This isn't like training them to be who we think they should be. This is under them, like supporting them in like having their roots and wings. You had that quote in the book. You had so many great quotes in the book, starting each chapter. I loved that. I'm a quote girl. But, you know, we really are there to support and to just guide. Yes. Yeah.
For guiding. But a lot of people mistake that for giving up limits and boundaries. And that's the tightrope. Because a boundary is firm, you know. A boundary says this is what's going to happen and I expect that this is going to happen from you. And kids need that for safety. To know boundaries. They have to know boundaries. We all need boundaries. Boundaries help us to make choices about who we want to be and how we want to belong in a way that's helpful and safe and connected. And if we don't have boundaries, then it's chaos. And I see a lot of people sort of mistake that guidance for now I can just say, okay, you want another chance? You get another chance. Or all right, one cookie. Because I know you feel upset, so I understand. No, that's not what this is. It's not that at all.
Mm.
And I've been fighting that for years. So I talk about that a lot when I'm speaking, doing speaking engagements and stuff about how important it is that we have the boundaries for kids. That's not control. That's providing guidance with safety, right? And connection.
I think it's important for us to learn how to tap into our authoritative voice, our firm, loving, gentle voice. We're not triggered. We're not angry. We're not judging. We're not controlling. We're saying, this is the limit and I love you. And this might be hard for you, but this is still the limit, right?
It's in your tone. A lot of it's in your tone of voice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just kind of a matter of fact.
Right.
So sometimes I tell people, if you really want to set a boundary, just say some facts to yourself. It's sunny outside. There's a fan above my head. I have a rug on the floor. It's time to go to bed.
That's right.
It just is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It is what it is.
And if you, it's not like in your mind, if you're going, oh God, okay, it's time for bed. Okay, how am I going to do this? Okay, I'm going to be assertive. Okay, I hope they follow the directions. You've already set yourself up because the tone's going to come out as asking versus, are you ready for bed, honey? No. They're going to tell you no.
Of
If
course.
you have a BART, that BART's going to tell you no. I would, but I don't want to.
That's
That's
right.
what he would say. Right? So, and then he'd say that to me. He'd say, I would, but I don't want to. Or he'd say, are you asking or are you telling me? Right?
Wow.
Which was great.
Yeah.
Because I said,
I mean, it showed you.
I said, I'm trying to be polite, but really I'm not telling you what I'm expecting of you right now. So take out the garbage now.
It's time to take out the garbage. It's time to go to bed. Yeah, I think a good example for this, I was unpacking a vacuum just the other day and I'm like, all the little boxes and little pieces and bubble wrap that come out of these boxes. I mean, this is like better than Christmas in our house. So my kids are starting to build with it and I'm unpacking the vacuum and I'm going in my head, like, I think this dust cup is too small. And where are we going to put that? I don't really know if I want this vacuum. And I'm in my own mind, like, do I want this vacuum or do I not want this vacuum? Is this a keeper or do I take this back to the store? And they're just like shredding all this interior stuff. And so I'm saying, as I'm in my own head debating keeping this vacuum, guys, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to keep it. So I think the best thing is if you just like put all this stuff over there. No, they didn't put all this stuff over there. They just kept playing with it. One of them is on top of the table now, the coffee table, stepping into the big box. And so I went like, okay, time to set a boundary. I don't know if I'm going to be keeping this vacuum. The box needs to go over there by the wall. Okay. And so when you're in this place in your mind and you're not present, I think for me, it comes down to presence. So, we can think of our own thing. Like, what is it for you? For me, it's like really presence, connection. You've mentioned so many times, like, leading with something that will, trigger you to say like, oh, okay, here it's time for me to be assertive right now. And, I must say, I've been practicing this work, conscious discipline and, connected parenting for, I would say, about a good 5-ish years now. And it's really messy in the beginning. And still, even 5 years in, it's a little messy. And when we mess up, we have the opportunity to repair. And it's not going to be perfect. And basically, just start now. It's not too late. Just start.
It's a journey, not a destination.
That's right. Yep.
It really is. There's I don't know, I think a few avatars that maybe achieved it, but even then, Buddha was pissed sometimes, and so was Jesus. I mean, it's not about being this perfect Omi person all the time when chaos is going around you. It's about managing the emotion around it. And that's when you manage yourself, you can help manage children. That's the bottom line. You cannot help manage a child if you're out of control or you're anxious or you're angry or any of an upset state comes to you. So you've got to manage yourself first before you ever approach a child. And what I heard you say, Ryan, is that, I had to wait, stop for a minute, right? Pause. That's self-regulation. Self-regulation requires you to pause and go, wait a minute, this isn't working, right? As opposed to, you're driving me nuts.
Yeah. Which has happened before in the past and probably will happen again, if I'm honest. I mean, really, like,
of course, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of the stories in Blue Star.
They're amazing. They're so good. And you're so vulnerable in sharing like what we all are thinking and feeling guilty about. I mean, mom guilt is a real thing. I mean,
It's a real thing.
it's a real thing.
It's also the cancer. It's what'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna kill you because you can't please all the people all the time, and
Right.
the only person you can really take care of is yourself, and so when you believe that you're responsible for the way other people feel, then you kibosh the relationship because now you have to be a certain way in order for them to like you. That's disempowering. You've put them in charge of you if you feel responsible for the way someone else feels. So if you say to a child, "You're making me mad," you've just told that child they're responsible for the way you feel.
Where can we get your book, Ginny?
You can get it on Amazon, Apple Books, and Barnes & Noble. Blue Star Grit, A Mother's Journey of Triumph and Tragedy, Raising a Defiant Child into an Exceptional Leader.
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared with us today, Ginny. You're just amazing.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I feel very honored, and I'm wishing you well.
Thanks so much for hanging out today. I loved this conversation so much. If you couldn't already tell, around here we're skipping the small talk and going straight into the heart of the matter. I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. Until then, follow along on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. And if this conversation sparked something in your heart, share it with a friend right now. Sharing the love is how we get the message out to more people, and as you know, the ripple effect is real. I will talk to you in the next episode, but until then, go love someone well.